Hello and welcome to episode 3 in our Kyosho Inferno NEO ST 3.0 series by RC Empire, and welcome to the very first fire up video of this amazing stadium truck from Kyosho. In the last episode we walked over the truck from top to bottom, taking a look at every component and mechanism and gave our first impressions, so do go back and watch that. And in this episode we will be fitting our battery, setting up our electronics and seeing them in action for the first time before we break in this truck in our next episode. So let's get straight into it. Now the first thing we are going to do is set up the electronics and give them a test. So if we take the receiver which came with the truck and stick in 4 AA batteries. One thing to note very early on, and one thing I didn't do, is to set up the transmitter exactly as the instruction manual specifies, and this will set your servo endpoints to the correct amount and to not turn too much. So I turned the forward EPA all the way to full, but as you can see this was far too much and was pulling the servo mount towards the engine, way too much. Another thing that could also be confusing is the labelling on the transmitter. So you've got forward EPA and then below that you've just got reverse. And you may think that these two knobs are for two different things. However, that EPA stands for both of them. So the top one is for forward endpoint adjustment and the bottom one is for reverse endpoint adjustment. And that reverse endpoint adjustment can help you increase the travel of the brakes and apply harder brake. And the forward one should be set to midpoint and the reverse one should be set to just under midpoint, as you can see in the following picture from the manual. So connect your transmitter battery and test the electronics, making sure that everything works, and also make sure your endpoints and trims are set. You want your servos to move just enough to get maximum effectiveness from them. So for example, full pull of the trigger should just fully open the throttle on the carburetor. And don't rush with this, take your time, learn what everything does and how it affects the car. And there you go, the electronics firing up for the very first time. Now these are actually the same servos as you have on the buggy version, and considering the size of this versus the buggy, we may need to upgrade these later on. I believe these are both 9 kilograms at 0.15 seconds for 6 volts, so very standard, and as you can see, not mega fast and not massively torquey. But we'll see how we get along with these later on. What we are also going to do is replace the stock battery holder with a HPI hump pack. And one thing I have to say is that unlike, for example, the HPI Trophy buggy, where all the electronics are housed in one box, this has 2 boxes, which initially makes swapping out the battery a bit of a pain because you have to open up both boxes and then feed the battery wire into the receiver box through the 2 holes in the bottom of the boxes, because the wire from the receiver won't reach into the battery box, which is fine. If you're racing, it's not a quick swap around, but the hump pack will more than likely last 10 times longer than most heats, and you can swap these during heats as well. What we will do later on is put an extender cable from the receiver into the battery box so that all the battery connectors are all in one box, and we just need to open that one up to swap a battery. Also note, there is a good amount of space in the battery box, so you can pad that out with some foam or sponge to stop the battery rattling around. But with all that plugged in, we can go ahead and fire up the electronics. Another thing I noticed with this and the buggy, and also the MP9 I think, there's no on and off text stamped on the plate, which for a £470 model you may have liked, but there are 2 different coloured screws there, with black being off and silver being on. In the manual it doesn't say this, but it does say down is on and up is off. But we're also going to mark this yellow as on with a little paint pen here. You can also see there's a splash proof cover on the switch there. But if we plug everything in, close all our boxes, and we are ready to fire up this truck. However, we will be leaving this episode here today, otherwise this is going to be a half an hour video, so we'll split this up in 2 parts, one for the electronics, and in the next episode we'll be firing up this car breaking in the engine and tuning it for the first time. So please subscribe for that. I hope you enjoyed this little video. Thank you for watching and see you soon.